This May, prepare for something exciting. Something adrenaline filled. Something that will get you more than just even. Something that will get you mad. Salutations, my fiendish film fanatics. I'm the Silver Screen Slasher, and welcome to Mad May. Joining me this month will be my good friends, George, aka Spike Greene, and the newly renamed Cinemastein. Say hello, gentlemen.
And if you guys are wondering why I changed my name, well, here's the thing. Originally, that old name that I had, we just recently found out that someone else had it, and also they were the first one to have that name. So right now on my YouTube account, by the way, it doesn't actually say Cinemastein, but at some point I do plan to rename it. So, but yeah, still, if you would be so kind, please, please call me from now on Cinemastein.
Cinemastein it is.
Happy to have it. Anyway, today begins the era of Mad May. Basically, this is where we're going to review all 4 of the Mad Max movies, starting with the original, which came out in 1979. Now, honestly, I actually like this movie, and I want to see what your opinions are on it before we start.
Well, I would like to say that I'm mad because I'm mad for this movie.
Yeah, I think it's an okay, fun, low-budget action film. Well, I mean, of course, out of all the films, it's not the greatest, but it's still the one film responsible for introducing the great iconic action movie star now, Mel Gibson, as the lovable Mad Max himself.
Unfortunately, we all know what happened with Mel Gibson and the fact that, well, we're not going to repeat it. We're not going to do it here, but
the less said, the better.
Yeah, exactly. He's turned out bad. Let's just say that.
Yeah, Silver, if you don't mind.
If we compliment him here, we're only complimenting like the acting skill. It's different. Appreciating the art, not the artist. You know.
Now, Silver, if I may, can I do the little introduction to the film?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. One last thing to note: an audio for this film, both the original and the American dub. We're the original Australian version of the film, just so we don't confuse anyone. So, Dine, the honors are yours.
Yep. The film first off starts off with an interesting little quote or whatever, in the first opening scene. It says, "A few years from now." At the time, this was, even in this movie, still to this day, this was very fascinating, and I thought, I wonder what the people who saw the first movie in the theaters thought. And it was obviously leading to something, well, even greater than the first one.
I call it a prelude to 2020.
In fact, I would like to say that in a way, it's a bit like the Evil Dead franchise in a way that the first one was just kind of a warm-up for what would come next. The Road Warrior is really, okay, Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn, that's really the Road Warrior for the Evil Dead franchise, you know what I mean? But similar, like, they have a bigger budget, they have more to do, sort of. They, except I think the Road Warrior extends the story a bit more, In the other case, Evil Dead 2 is sort of a rehash of the first one, so, in that instance, we can't really compare that. But you know what I mean, right?
But, yeah, as I was saying, the plot of this film is about, well, a rogue police officer named Max, and is really pissed off and really emotionally sad because a group of bikies had unfortunately killed his wife and child in the process of trying to save them.
Mm-hmm.
And as you can tell from the plot, there's not really a lot to this film, but besides, really, it's people, and I agree, people really consider the first one a simple revenge, low-budget action flick.
I do agree with that, but there is more to it. For instance, there are plenty of chase scenes when it comes to this movie, as well as the opening action sequence, which involves probably the most deranged criminal I've seen in a movie, the Knight Rider. And honestly, this guy is just as bonkers as anyone else in this franchise. But let's be fair, this is the Mad Max universe we're talking about.
And of course, since we're going to be talking about the whole movie, if it's not obvious already, we're going to do a full spoiler review on it. Because the plot, even summarizing the plot is that simple that, it's probably 6 things at most, really. But
Speaking of, real quickly, if you have never seen the first Mad Max or even any of the Mad Max films, this is even a bit of a spoiler for the other ones. So we don't have to do it in the previous videos. But yeah, if you've never seen the first one or the next three that we're about to review soon, then yes, do not watch the reviews if you want to find out what happens for yourself. But on that, if you have seen the film and you would like to see our thoughts on it, then please enjoy.
In other words, this is a spoiler, and you've been warned. It's then
Oh.
we're introduced to the secondary and to the psychic of the character, the series, Goose, who's played by Steve Bisley, I believe.
Yeah, I think so.
Honestly, I consider him to be a funny, comic relief for the main character of the film, Max Rokitansky, played by Mel Gibson. And no, I did not just make up that word. That is the character's surname.
Well, yeah, technically the character's surname Goose. I mean, that was, 7 years before Top Gun? Which, I know that Cinemastein does not like Top Gun, but the Silver Screen Slasher does, and I do too. But
yes, by the way, folks, please don't be mad at me. I'm just saying, but if I don't like Top Gun, then yes, just don't be mad at me.
Each their own opinion.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Obviously, everyone...
And in all honesty as well, you guys, just to let you know as well, I literally, when I saw the first film, right, I literally tried my very best to at least enjoy it, but unfortunately, I don't know, I couldn't enjoy it.
Makes it.
I never enjoyed Pretty Woman or Natural Born Killers. That may be controversial.
Yeah. Anyway, the Knight Rider is probably is quite the adversary for the opening of the movie. Taking out most of the cops, the apocalyptic cops that try to take him out. And honestly, it leads to brutal violence. That's in the chase scene. And hell, I even got nervous when a little kid walked in the middle of the road.
Oh, yes.
But speaking of now, I kind of want to move on to the next thing during that part as well, and that is the action in this film. There's not a lot of it, but still a pretty good amount of it. Mostly to do with the crashes and the stunts. First off, this film has some of the most realistic and most insane car crashes caught on screen. And I'll tell you why. And yes, just to let you know, it is all practical. They didn't use any special effects or anything. This is literally all practical. Every car that you see get demolished in this film, they literally destroyed it. But not in that. Another little interesting fact or a side note, when they were making this movie, they unfortunately had to sacrifice quite a few vehicles that even some of the crew owned or loved.
Yeah, all worth it for making this wonderful movie. And honestly, though, I do feel sorry that some of the vehicles got wrecked during production. But you know what they say: you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs.
Well, I mean, I do feel sorry for the people who've lost the vehicles and all that. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay, filling in. Anyone?
I actually want to quickly see what you two think of the action sequences in this movie.
The action sequences, in terms of the low budget, I know that you said before the review you wouldn't really mention effects, but I would like to mention the facts that you can see not only just the man-made effects, but the people. You can see the sweat on the faces. You can see people bleed from their injuries a bit. And honestly, I would just like to say that in terms of special effects, practical special effects are known as SFX, special effects, and VFX, visual effects, is computer effects. So what we got here is SFX. So basically, I do think that you can just tell when something is real. And it also feels more realistic due to the lower budget because, and I'll tell you why. The lower budget just allows it to feel more real. It's not glossed up. It's not Hollywood. It's not, absolutely pristine. It's a bit of rough and tumble. It's a bit rawer, if you know what I mean.
This film really does have a realistic feel to it. It does feel like a good old crime action film.
I do agree with that. and a lot. I think that a lot of the best action scenes in the movie come from the car chases. You can just, and I mean, they're the best ways to get to know a lot of the characters. And speaking of which, I feel like it's now they should probably introduce the main villain of this film.
Or,
That's
as I
Toe
like to
Cutter.
say, the performances.
Yeah, let's start out with the main villain, the Toe Cutter, played greatly by the late Hughes Key Byrne, who sadly passed away earlier this year.
Speaking of, I said this to Spike before we made this review, but that is, real quickly, I would like to honor him and say, yep, in the loving memory of Hugh Byrne, who honestly, to me, in my opinion, played one of the most unforgettable and one of the most coolest Mad Max villains, but not just that, but even, or really, I should say two, and not only that, yeah, just one of the most memorable villains in the entire franchise in general.
Indeed.
Not just the Toe Cutter, but even later on, played the main villain in Fury Road as well, which was
We'll get to that.
Yep.
So George, what's your opinion on the Toe Cutter?
The Toe Cutter. Hugh Keays-Byrne really turns in a pretty good performance there. I mean, he's not over the top like Frank in Blue Velvet, which can be its own kind of fun, or Nicolas Cage is generally over the top, but then he's a bit understated most of the time as the Toe Cutter, and he sort of speaks a bit slower, a bit more menacing, and he yells exactly once. I mean, you know what I mean. But yeah, that makes it a bit scarier. The fact that he just bam yells once.
Yeah, I agree. He's honestly one of those truly intimidating villains. Not like your horror movie slashers like Michael Myers or Freddy Krueger. This is just a simple or average psychotic human being that will just destroy anything in his path.
Speaking of, here's my thoughts now on him on his performance. But yeah, when he played the Toe Cutter, what I like about him is that he's creepy, he's weird, and he's psychotic, and he's just so dang good in this. Just to give you an idea, at least how good he is, or at least how I think how good he is. At times, he's just really so there. Like he's that character. He's not, his usual self anymore. He's really that character. At times, I don't know why, but I just feel like he kind of is a little bit like Heath Ledger's Joker, if you know him, like at least in performance wise, where he's just so into the role. He really did try his best just to seem very scary and creepy and psychotic, and I love it.
And that goes to no matter what budget you have, you can throw yourself into a role completely.
Yep, and that goes for that kind of respect goes not just to Hughes Key Burns, but to any and all actors that have played a great villain in movies. He's honestly, my respect and condolences go out to all of them, past, present, and future.
Speaking of,
now let's talk about Max himself. I honestly feel like in this movie he's kind of played as more, or like not to a lesser extent. Like we're not seeing a full Mad Max. We're just seeing him as glass half full, basically.
Yeah. Here's how I best described him, and I think you guys agree when I say this. Or just to tell you a bit about how his performance is portrayed in this film. So Max is a young man who is dealing with the paranoia of his good friend and his partner, who has unfortunately been horribly burned in a fire, that was caused by the Toe Cutter and this guy named Johnny, who we'll get to later. But
in other words,
and
his goose
speaking
was
of one quick side note as well, though, what I loved about that scene when Max goes into to the room to see what he looks like or whatever, or how he's doing. It's so scary and so disturbing that they don't even show what he looks like. The only thing that they do show, though, is his hand or his arm or a bit of his hand mostly.
Yeah, like
that's it, and that is what makes that scene so perfect.
Exactly. If you think his hand was bad and they're not showing you the rest, despite what they're willing to show you, you can assume you may not want to see that.
Exactly. This is one of those scenes where it doesn't show you everything, but allows your brain to just to try and figure it out on its own.
Even
I love that kind of
A really famous example of this is Psycho. You know, the shower scene. We all know the shower scene, and you know, you never see a stab land. You never see anything that could be considered, you know, adult in nature or whatever. You hear the music, you hear the screams, you know, you see the knife swinging. You never see the stab, but you feel it because you came to care for this person. You know, that's a bit like what this Mad Max scene was going for.
Exactly. And,
Mm-hmm.
and the only other intimidating thing about that Psycho scene is basically the chocolate syrup going down the drain.
Chocolate syrup, of course, standing in for blood because red doesn't show properly in black and white, and they had to use brown, just
Speaking
like
of,
they did later in Raging Bull. Anyway, moving on back to Mad Max.
yep, back to Max himself. But yeah, as well, what I like about in this film, he's not at least the brave, cool badass he would later become to be. In this film, for not only that he is concerned for the safety of his family even, and is a real family man in this film. And at times they also do give a bit of a good screen time to his wife and kid. Not a lot, but still a pretty good amount.
Mm-hmm.
His wife, his name is Jessie, and I believe oh gosh, I forgot the kid's name again. But anyway, still I love how they kind of explored still a bit of Max's paranoia. Don't you guys think?
Mm-hmm. In in a post-apocalyptic world like this, which by the way was filmed in Australia,
Mm.
you just have to expect the unexpected.
So since this is a full spoiler review, I can mention just there's a scene. We're going to get to the context later, but the scene at the end where he's handcuffed to a car that's about to burn up and he has to hack through his ankle if he wants to survive. That scene, I've actually been to that bridge. However, I can't remember what the bridge is called, but I know it is in Victoria and I have been there. And yeah, so I have a flashback to when I was there every time I see that scene. You know, it's I think pretty much the last thing in the film before he drives off. So yeah.
Speaking of as well, yeah, it's just now I actually want to tell you guys two interesting facts at least for the film. First off, is that did you know that originally when they wrapped up on this film, right? Since it was such a low budget film, right, that George Miller and some of the others were literally running low on money so badly, right, that instead they just asked the guys at least who played the bikies, right, or the bikers in the film. They even just asked them, or like sort of, I guess, give them a bit of a treat by saying, "Here, we can't give you any money, but would you guys like to go down and have a good old beer instead?"
Mm-hmm.
And so they did. They actually had a beer instead. They all got them a beer.
Yeah. I mean, any if there's anyone internationally watching, not all Australians like beer. For example, I've never liked alcohol of any type, but
Hate the stuff.
there is the whole there are a whole bunch of people who do like their alcohol.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Moderation.
and Spike, you did say you didn't remember exactly where in Victoria the hacksaw scene took place, right?
I can't remember. Sorry.
Well, it turns out that the version of that my copy of Mad Max actually comes with a little booklet, which does include some of the locations where some of the scenes were shot.
Oh.
And according to the booklet, the hacksaw scene itself took place in Gellies Road, Sunbury.
Yes. No wonder it was so familiar. Yes. Yes. Ah, yes. Okay. That solves that then. All right. So yeah. What else do we have? Max Rockatansky himself actually does not appear until the DVD's a bit sped up, but the DVD said that he doesn't appear till 11 minutes into the film.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. The film is just basically introducing you to the world before introducing you to Max. That is a brilliant setup.
Yeah,
You know
like
what I like though as well? They actually also introduced even some of his like cop buddies or whatever, some of his like buddies before we even see Max himself. They also even give a bit of screen time to some of his friends.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I kind of find that a little good in a way. They also give them a bit of screen time.
I mean, you don't go into the film expecting award-winning writing, but it's at least admirable that they tried to have characters that you'd sort of kind of care for, at least. They're
Another
not.
interesting fact, by the way, originally this film was actually not about, well, a cop going rogue. Originally, it was actually about a journalist. Just to
Mm-hmm.
give you an idea on how true this is, even I heard George Miller himself say this in an interview. I'm not kidding. That was literally his original idea for this film.
Impressive. Okay, I think it's at this point that we should probably get to the ending of the movie because I really want to discuss a few ideas, some of the scenes from there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Yeah.
where the
Indeed.
bulk premise comes in, really,
Because
because
in all honesty, as well, you guys,
still.
for the first Mad Max film, for my script of it, it wasn't even really that big and that long. So just to let you know as well, and besides, it's not a very long movie at the same time as well. It goes on for like 89 minutes.
No harm done, man.
89
So
minutes.
yeah, that's why this review probably out of all of them will be the shortest.
So let's get to it. Eventually, Max and his family are on the run from Toe Cutter and his gang, and so they have to hide out in an abandoned house. But eventually, Toe Cutter's gang and his gang catch up to them, and eventually they beat, bash, and murder Jesse Rockatansky and Max's son.
Well, they run over them
Yep.
Yeah, that's what happens.
because
Which
she was
literally
running in the middle of the
roadkill.
road.
like with the goose's hand scene, that's another case in which they use, you only see the baby's shoe and the ball he was playing with, nothing else, and it shows even less than that other scene with Goose. This one you don't even see any gore, and still just to be effective because you feel that sympathy. How would you feel if your wife and baby were run over? However, keeping in mind that this trope was not as widespread back then, like sometimes, a lot of the time did happen, but there is a thing in comics especially called fridging, which this is a clear example of, and we now recognize it as dated. Fridging is infamously basically where a woman is killed off in order to advance a male's narrative, which we recognize now as a very dated trope. Fridging, the term itself, came from a Green Lantern comic in which Green Lantern's girlfriend was put into pieces and put into a fridge.
Two things by the way that I have to say about that scene as well. First off, when the wife as well was trying to run away from the bikies in the woods somehow, right? Unfortunately as well, they did have a dog in the film, and well, let's just say they turned the dog into into their barbecue.
Well, at least all good dogs go to heaven.
Yeah, and another thing is as well.
Another thing I want to note is
Another
that
quick thing I have to say about that scene is I will never though forget that scene where you see the baby's shoes kind of just kind of get onto the road, if you know, like kind of jump onto the road. I will never forget that scene.
Speaking of which, when it comes to the death of some of the more important characters in the movie, you know what it actually reminded me of? The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. In the way that we don't see everything involving their deaths, but the mind allows us to piece together what's going on.
In
that
fact,
is true.
Without spoiling too much of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, basically the director for that one, Toby Hooper, he wanted to get a lower parental guidance type rating in America, so he deliberately avoided trying to show much blood or gore. But then he got an X because it was too scary or somehow violent.
Unfortunately, it also resulted in an R rating as well, no matter what.
Had to cut down to the American R rating, and it was like The Conjuring was in 2013. It was too scary for any parental guidance or PG-13 rating, so an R it remained, and there you go. So yeah, he tried to restrain himself, but then for a film with the title Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the restraint really does work to its advantage, because sure, the sequels will probably have all the carnage you'd expect from such a title, but the restraint can work to your advantage, as we proved with Psycho, as we proved with Mad Max, as proven with Hitchcock in general, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, after Jesse and the baby are, street pizza, and Max is left for dead, he eventually heads back to Main Force Patrol and grabs the signature car of the series, the Interceptor, and chases after them. He eventually manages to kill most of them, including Toe Cutter, and the only one left is Johnny the Boy, who he eventually corners is in the famous hacksaw scene, where he changes into his own bike and gives him a choice: either die from the explosion or use a hacksaw to cut his own ankle off, which would take about 5 minutes.
And he says as well it's going to go off in about like 10 minutes.
Yeah, but cutting his own ankle off would take him 5. But I think we both know. I think all of us know what happens. He
Mm.
doesn't make up his mind in time, and he dies in a resulting explosion.
Yep, that's another scene I'll never forget. Mad Max just driving off into the distance, and in the background you see the explosion where Johnny was, and then the film ends with Mad Max just dramatically, just
And yeah,
and emotionally, just his kind of emotional and dramatic face going right into your face at the end. I can't really explain that very well, but it ends with him driving off
He
into the middle of nowhere.
Can I? Can I? Sorry, but I was gonna say, yeah, like he's not really looking at you, but he's like looking off into the distance, like whatever's next. You know, I'm ready now because I'm mad and I want to take revenge and all that. But you
Yeah.
know, if you're wondering what he's gonna do next, you're like, oh, he's hell bent on vengeance, and then you're like, well, if he was ruthless to that guy, imagine how ruthless he could be. And then you're thinking, well, oh boy, that was, the way he dealt with that villain, having the villain make a major choice like that. Woo, you know.
And that,
Anyway,
yeah.
I think that's
Anyway.
our review of Mad Max.
Yeah. Honestly, after reviewing this movie, I still consider it to be a masterpiece, even after almost 55 years.
I'm going to give it for its type of movie. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10.
But trust me when I say that this isn't, and that this will be that I'm not gonna hate on this movie, since how can I? It's goddamn Mad Max. So I'm also gonna give it an 8 out of 10. Nine?
For this film, I was originally going to give it a 6 out of 10, but I don't know. I think I might actually at least. Still, since it doesn't have a whole lot for me, at least for me to love about it, except for, of course, the great crashes and the action sequences, and of course the story itself, and even the characters, and especially what George Miller and the world of Mad Max would give birth to. Still, just to sort of say thank you to it, all I can say is I'll actually give this film a little bit of a lower score than 8, just one step lower. A 7 out of 10. Find that good, decent action film, and yeah, the way they spent their money for this film, they used it very wisely and very carefully.
Fair enough about the 7. I mean, in terms of the usual type of genre, this is one of the exploitation films, and exploitation films are not really known for having very good stories, and you're lucky if they're watchable, But then Mad Max at least tries. So that's my personal reason that I've given it an 8. It's not up to the usual quality of an 8-star movie, if you know what I mean. But despite that, it is a great example of its type. And I feel like personally, I rate movies on the type of movie it is. So in terms of that, if it was another type of movie, I'd probably rate it, I don't know, 7. But yeah, 8 for this one for me at least. Yeah.
Really for you guys, but for me it's more 7.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Trust me when I say that the fun isn't over. Just wait until we hit second gear. Next time on Mad May, we take a look at Mad Max 2 and see what it's like to face off against the Road Warrior. Until then, we'll see you next week on the highway to hell, folks.
Later,
Bye.
guys. Bye.